Oh, right, I should do that. Okay, I believe.
You're recording also? Or?
Um, yeah, we're broadcasting live, in fact, so it'll record to YouTube.
Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's episode of Paranormal Encyclopedia. As always, I am your host, Kevin Mears, demonologist, paranormal investigator, and the Paranormal Encyclopedia. I am, as always, joined by my co-host. Brian, you want to introduce yourself?
Brian McKinley, author of vampire thrillers, general weirdo.
Yeah. And Keith, do you want to introduce yourself as our guest?
Hello, I'm DeCandido. I have written a ridiculous number of books, or a number of ridiculous books, depending on which Amazon reviews you read. Um, I've written more than 60 novels, more than 130 short stories, about 75 comic books, and more nonfiction than I can count because I'm bad at math. Um, Most of which has been in the either in the science fiction, fantasy, horror, mystery, or superhero genres. Um, a few others besides. And I'm also been an editor in the field, working for the late Byron Price for a few years, and now currently doing freelance work. I've edited a bunch of anthologies, um, and I'm also a musician and also a martial artist, and probably some other stuff too that I can't remember due to the rather severe lack of sleep.
That's really a pretty long resume as it is.
Yeah,
And timing was perfect. I just finished posting on the links as you finished up.
excellent.
So we are all set. Keith, why don't you talk a little bit about your new book that's coming out? That's definitely up the show's alley.
It's actually out. It's been out since late October. It's called
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, it's okay. Supernatural Crimes Unit NYPD. First book is called The Thin Blue Ley Line. It is about a division of the New York Police Department that is tasked with handling crimes involving magic and monsters. Uh, it's an urban fantasy, but also a police procedural. So it's the main characters are the detectives in the SCU who are headquartered in a tenement building that the NYPD seized in a drug raid like a decade ago, and have converted to use for Supernatural Crimes Unit. The conceit is that about 5 years before the novel started, a vampire killed a mayor's aide, and it was all caught on camera, and there was like no doubt that this was definitely a vampire that did it. Uh, at which point, a task force was formed to find this particular vampire. And then after that, the unit was formed because the NYPD could no longer deny that there are some crimes that are more Anne Rice than Ed McBain. And so the SCU was formed, and so anything that involves supernatural creatures, that involves magic being performed, which is very limited, but does happen, uh, they get to deal with it. The there's a the mayor's aide being killed also kind of outed a lot of supernatural creatures who had been able to stay under the radar and stay kind of more or less hidden from the mainstream, and they can't as easily as they used to because of that. And the responses among the rest of New York has been one of three possible reactions. One is, well, it's about time you guys admitted this. What the hell's wrong with you? About a third don't believe it's real and think that the unit is entirely nonsense and shouldn't even exist. And the other third don't give a crap one way or the other. They just want to make sure they get to work on time. So there's a
That
cast of,
definitely seems like the sort of city that would have that. Yeah, I don't care if there's vampires or can I get to work?
yeah, as long as the subways are still running, we're good.
Yeah.
The the main characters, there are five detectives. There is a sergeant who runs the day to day. There is a lieutenant who is in charge of the entire unit. There's a support staff, including clerical staff and an archivist who is also an expert on the supernatural, uh, who helps with a lot of the research, and and several uniforms who are assigned to the SCU to perform various and sundry uh, menial tasks that have to get done, including guarding the holding cells or picking up witnesses or other stuff. So,
The other problem that occurs to me though is how did they catch a vampire on film?
I not everything. The only reason
Hmm.
the whole rationale behind the idea of vampires not being caught on film is because there was silver in film. There isn't silver in film. You know, digital photography would capture them. You know, even on the basis of that whole idea that can't be picked up by silver. Um, so yeah, the that was always based in an aspect of the technology that doesn't really exist anymore. So, and I
Well, it is
tried
a
relatively science based. Like for example, while vampires can change into a bat or into a wolf, the bat or the wolf will still have the same mass as that the vampire has in human form. So if you're a 150-pound person who becomes a vampire, you change into a bat, it will be a 150-pound bat because the preservation of mass and energy is. So
physics, basically.
yes,
Although that seems to raise its own question of wouldn't a 150-pound bat have a lot of trouble flying?
yes.
Yeah, they're not going too far.
Why they don't do it. They can fly.
So where
But
did
that's
the idea come from? Is this like X-Files meets Law and Order, or
kind of I've made a career out of doing fantastical police procedurals of various kinds. My very first novel and actually my very first short story were both involved Spider-Man. It was a Spider-Man short story in 1994 and the Spider-Man novel I did in 1998. In both cases, I had him working with the NYPD on the particular case that he was doing. Um, in both cases involving Venom, and I've done other things. I have another series that's been actually running for over 20 years now called the Precinct series. It led off with a book called Dragon Precinct and has continued with Unicorn Precinct, Goblin Precinct, etc. And those books are in an epic fantasy setting, so it's in a very D&D-esque, Tolkien-esque high fantasy setting with humans and elves and dwarves and wizards and magic and all that sort of sorcery stuff. But the main characters are two detectives in the Cliff's End Castle Guard who are tasked with maintaining law and order in the domain. So the plots of those books are straight up police procedurals, but a lot of the cases will involve, strange creatures or magic, which is run of the mill in that particular. Um, the first book, Dragon Precinct, opens with a band of adventurers who are gathered at an inn to go on a heroic quest, like the start of every D&D game ever. And, but they're not the protagonists; they're the victims. One of the party turns up dead, and our protagonists, Lieutenant Torian Van Wivel and Denthor Sicilian, who are the two main characters, they have to find out why the party is being targeted and solve that crime. And those two detectives are the main characters throughout the entire series. There have been 6 novels and a short story collection so far, with more to come. Um, and I've worked police procedure into uh, other fantastical things I have done. I did a novel and some short fiction in the fictional city of Super City, which is basically what cops would have to deal with in a city filled with superheroes. So the equivalent of what the Gotham City Police Department or the Metropolis Police Department or Marvel's New York NYPD would have to deal with. But it's from their point of view, specifically how having superheroes and supervillains around would warp police procedure. Um, I did a supernatural novel in which they had to work with a cop on a particular case, uh, and other stuff like that. It's something that has always interested me, um, and, uh, and the idea of doing it in contemporary New York was something that had sort of been in the back of my head for a while, and it finally came to the front of my head.
And I think may have lost sound.
Huh?
Ryan,
yeah,
Keith, any?
Yeah.
Keith? Okay, I don't know then. We got sound. That's what matters.
Yeah,
The Gremlins like to screw with my show.
they do. Yes.
This is the lighter end of it. Back in the day, oh good lord.
So do you have any kind of background in law enforcement, or just do a lot of
Not
research?
as such. It's just something that's always interested me. Um, I I've always been a fan of cop shows on TV, particularly the more realistic ones like Party Miller and Hill Street Blues. I grew up watching those, um, and then later things like The Shield and The Wire and Homicide. Um, the and just I've read a lot of nonfiction about various police forces over the years. It's just a thing that has always fascinated me. Um, not due to any particular background. I mean, I have a second cousin who was a cop. But that's about it. Um,
Sure.
but I've also talked with a lot of cops, and I've uh, tried to get the procedural elements properly. And I actually had 5 different people involved in law enforcement reading over SCU before I went through. Just to make sure that and they caught a bunch of different things that I screwed up. So that was
It's the advantage of having cops read it for you.
yes.
I mean, I can't speak for police since I've never done that, but I think anyone who works any kind of field that's ever been turned into fiction, be it TV, movie, or novels, will tell you it's not fun reading somebody who doesn't know what they're doing.
Oh yeah. I always tell whenever I'm giving advice to writers, we'll ask about various things. One of the things I tell them is if there's something you don't know about and you need to include it in your book, you will not have any trouble finding somebody who would be willing, who knows about the subject to help you out. Because all you got to do is say, I'm writing a book that has this thing you love in it, and I want to make sure I get it right. Will you please help me? And they will almost always say yes, because they have read several books that got it wrong and that they then hurled across the room with great force. So, yeah, that's usually
30 years in the paranormal, trust me, I've run into it a lot. And it's like,
ah,
no. There's acceptable breaks with reality of the fact that I've had some weird experiences, but I've never met, say, a troll. Well, there are things I haven't met. I'll put it like I haven't met any gods that I know of. I'll put it like
okay.
that. But
But that can
Haven't
get
met
dangerous.
any real vampires, any real supernatural vampires yet.
which depends on your definition of vampire, I suppose, but mostly no.
Well,
Yeah.
supernatural.
Undead, I'll put it like that. I've never been
Yeah.
an undead vampire that I know of.
Right.
I also made an effort to use a lot of different paranormal creatures. I mean, yes, there are vampires, yes, there are werewolves, um, the standard stuff. But I also tried to include other things as well. The opening scene has the SCU taking arresting a domovoy, which is a shape changer from Russian mythology. There's a Luduan from Chinese mythology. There's a Kappa from Japanese mythology, and so on. I'm trying to reflect the city itself. The New York is one of the most culturally diverse cities in the world, and so that would apply to the supernatural creatures as well.
Makes sense. What's your aside from like the obvious vampire werewolf? What's your favorite supernatural creature you've used?
Oof, used a lot. There's not a particular type of creature I like. There's just certain characters that I have come to like. Like one person who was in danger of like seriously taking over the novel, and I had to sort of rein him in. Was a vampire in SCU, uh, Valapart, who runs a BDSM club in Soho. Uh, he was supposed to be just a character who was an informant who shows up in one scene, and I wound up using him again in another scene just because I needed to use him again because he was just wonderful. Uh, and I've already got like thinking of other things I could do with him. Um, he turned out to be much more interesting than I expected him to.
That happens.
Yeah. The one thing I had fun with, not this project, but I did a couple of short stories for Jonathan Mayberry's V Wars anthologies, which were the idea was that all the different, like every single um, culture has some form of vampire
Yep.
mythology in it. Somebody who can basically drain the life from you in some way or other. And the conceit of V Wars is that all those bits of mythology were real, but the genetic tendency toward vampirism died out. But there is a virus that gets unfrozen when when polar ice caps melt that reactivates that gene. So then people become vampires, but they don't become, Bela Lugosi vampires, or Bram Stoker vampires, or Stephanie Meyer vampires, or Joss Whedon vampires. They become whatever the vampire legend is from their ethnic heritage.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Like
and
that.
there's some really, really fascinating vampires in various cultures, and I think one of my favorite was an Assassin, which is from African mythology, which is a creature that has hooks for feet
Yes, I know
and
that.
metal teeth.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Those
hangs
are those
upside
cool.
down from trees
Yeah,
and pulls people up into the tree.
exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
And I had some people of African American descent who turned into that, uh, and that was fun to play around with, and how somebody would function that way. Um, so that was cool.
No, we've had Jonathan on the show a couple of times.
Yeah.
He's a good guy, good author, good guy.
Yeah, yeah, I love working with Jonathan. We've done a bunch of different projects together. He's the current editor of Weird Tales magazine, and I've done a few short stories, both for the 100th anniversary Weird Tales anthology and for the magazine itself. He and I edited an anthology together 3 years ago called Double Trouble, which was
Oh, nice.
it was an anthology of team ups of classic characters, and by classic characters I mean characters in the public domain, so we don't have to pay for the rights. And uh, but things like Captain Nemo teaming up with Frankenstein's monster, Shakespeare's Prospero teaming up with Don Quixote de la Mancha, stuff like that. And we had so much fun doing that way. And he's bought stories for me for a bunch of things, not just V Wars, but some other anthologies he's done as well. And he did a story for an anthology I put together. My wife and I did an anthology called The Four Somethings of the Apocalypse, which were alternate takes on the Four Horsemen. So the four librarians of the apocalypse, the four lawyers of the apocalypse, the four cats of the apocalypse, the four customer service representatives of the apocalypse, and so on. And Jonathan,
I'm just questioning at the moment. What is the more terrifying idea to me? The four lawyers of the apocalypse or the four cats of the apocalypse?
they
Because
were
both
both
are quite terrifying in their own way.
the four lawyers of the apocalypse story was written by Michael Ventrella, who is a criminal lawyer. That is his day job. So,
Oh, dear.
yeah, it was called Horseman, 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 and Horseman Attorneys at Law.
Nice. That's good.
I'm going to have to check that out. Horseman, 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 and horseman attorneys.
It was a fun anthology. Jonathan did a story for it. David Mack, David Gerald, Jody Lynn Nye, she did the cats. Shauna McGuire did a story for it. A bunch of other Michael J. Friedman, Dayton Ward, and Kevin Dillmore. A lot of cool folks.
Some of those names I recognize from Star Trek novels.
Yeah. Derek Tyler Attico, also Mary Pham, Aaron Rosenberg, Jen Rosenberg, Megan Mackey, David Mack, I think I mentioned. He did David did the four Hollywood development executives of the apocalypse.
Well, hey, it's the 21st century. Even the apocalypse needs Hollywood producers.
Yep. That's pretty much what his story was.
I remember reading years ago that there's apparently um, a plan that was created, I want to say by Pat Robertson. I may be mistaken, but some televangelists actually sat down and like had a serious meeting with their people about how to film the second coming.
Well, you want to be prepared. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of lens do you want to use?
Right.
You know.
How do you deal with all the light and lens flare?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Literally, the atheist I read this from commenting, it's like, could you imagine telling God, could you tone it down a little, Jesus? You're overexposing everything.
Yeah, we have a little less brightness.
Oh, excuse me. I'm still trying to kick the flu.
Oof. Yeah.
No, I'm glad that I finally remember because ever since the first time we had you on, I've been like, where do I know this guy from? And I want to say many years ago, I bought Dragon Precinct from you at a convention.
Oh wow. Okay. Cool. I have
Like,
continued that series.
I think I misplaced the book, unfortunately, because that was many years and a whole bunch of moves since.
Yeah. Well, Eastbeck Books, who also does the System of Paradoxa series and the steampunk anthologies and such, they've been publishing books since 2019, and it's been they've been great. I love working with Danny and
So have you
We've
always
worked.
been to writing, or
Pretty much. I've been writing since I was 6. I
okay?
wasn't very good at it then because I was 6. Um, but I was raised. I joke that I was raised by a roving pack of feral librarians, which is only a slight exaggeration. Um, and so storytelling was always a part of my life. My parents read to me when I was little. They read with me once I could read on my own. They gave me things to read, uh, and I've always wanted to be, one of the people who make stories. That's something that's always been part of who I am. Um, so that desire has always been there, and I was always writing through grammar school, high school, and it wasn't until I was in college that I really was any good at it. But
Right.
and I started out doing nonfiction. I wrote articles and book reviews and other reviews for various magazines for a bunch of years from 1989 until forward, really, because I'm still doing it. But these days, most of my nonfiction is published by Reactor Magazine, the website that used to be Tor.com. I write about various bits of pop culture for them pretty regularly. I've written about Star Trek, uh, screen adaptations of superheroes, Babylon 5, Doctor Who, Stargate, 66 Batman, a bunch of other things for them. But I've always wanted to write, and I'm really grateful that I've been able to pursue it as a career. Um, Mostly because I don't think I'm really fit to do anything else. So certainly not at this point. I haven't had the closest I've had to a normal job was in 2010 when I worked for the U.S. Census Bureau. I worked on the decennial census in 2010. Other than that, I've been basically either a writer or an editor or a musician or a martial arts instructor. Um, that's been my life over the last 15 years.
Which martial art?
Longer than that, really. So I don't think I would be capable of working in an office, and I can't imagine anybody would look at 57-year-old me and think, oh yeah, we should hire that guy.
See, it
But
works for me. I'm a security guard. I don't have to look all that serious. Mostly because I don't have to deal with anybody.
yeah, well, um, but no, I've always loved writing. I must have some talent for it because they keep sending me checks. So
You're making a living at it. You definitely have a talent for it. I mean, the one kind of goes with the other.
Yeah, you're doing
who
better
knows?
than most.
It's like for that matter, I know writers who have talent that don't that aren't making
Yeah,
a living at it.
it's incredibly. I mean, one of the reasons why I do so many different things is because that's the only way to make a living. My sources of income are multiple, and that's partly because any of them could disappear at any point. Um, there was a period there between 1999 and 2009. That 10-year period, I was making most of my living writing Star Trek novels, short stories, novellas, and such. And then the editor I was working with got laid off at the end of 2008, and all of a sudden that work dried up because the new editor wasn't interested in working. So I had to shift and do other. That's why I do the editorial work. It's why I do the martial arts teaching. It's why I write for Reactor. All of it is in service of just keeping the different multiple income sources. So this way, if one of them disappears, I'm not screwed.
Yeah, usually better that you not get screwed. We're a fan of our guests not getting financially screwed over.
Indeed.
Yeah, you have just glancing. You have written a bunch of Star Trek. That's cool. What's
Oh
your
yeah,
favorite?
no, I've written like 14 Star Trek novels and about a dozen short stories and a bunch of novellas and one reference book. I did a coffee table book called The Klingon Art of War, which was 10 precepts on how to live your life as a proper warrior. It's basically a violent self-help book. Um,
Nice.
and that
Who's
was
your
fun.
favorite character?
It's a tie. My two favorite characters in Star Trek are Worf and Kira Nerys.
Oh,
Uh, and in fact, I lucked out. My first two Star Trek novels that I wrote, the first one focused on Worf, the second one focused on Kira. So
nice.
I was fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, I'm a
But I
big
love both
Deep
those
Space
characters.
Nine fan myself.
Yeah.
Same. I didn't watch it much when it first came out, but I sat down and binged it a year or two ago, and I loved it.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I have been watching Star Trek literally since birth. I grew up on the reruns of the original series. When I was growing up in New York in the 1970s, they showed reruns of the original series every weeknight at 6 o'clock, and that was our routine. We would watch Star Trek at 6 and then eat dinner at 7. Um, that was what we did, and I grew up with that, and then with each new show that came on and each new movie that came out, I was always there, doing it. I was reading the novels and reading the comic books and playing the role playing games and
Oh
all of
yeah.
them. And then eventually I moved on to be working on it professionally, but that didn't really dim my fandom for it. Um, I still write about the show for Reactor. I've been reviewing the new shows as new episodes come out for them, and I did rewatches of all the older shows. So I've written about basically every single Star Trek production uh, for Reactor since
That just
2011.
reminds me, there's a side series I keep meaning to do to this, specifically because I really tired, I expect you may be as well, of people looking at new Star Trek or new Superman and complaining, oh, it's gone woke. It's like, where
Yeah.
have you been that you think modern
Yeah,
science fiction is more woke than it used to be?
yeah.
Exactly.
No, it's tiresome. Um, the yeah, no, Star Trek. Star Trek has always been woke. Certainly, Superman has always been.
Yeah.
Um,
But specifically the idea of like talking about original Star Trek and how socially progressive it was, and then
yeah,
Next
yeah.
Gen, Quantum Leap. You watch these shows and it's like, it's not even subtle.
No,
you
but
know, I
nostalgia
remember
makes fools of us all. Uh,
my fiance and I watching Next Generation, and it's just some of the one episode with the really that on the one hand has really terrible Irish stereotypes.
oh,
Oh yeah, that one.
That's
Oh,
also a
that.
shameless, like very obvious metaphor about abortion rights and
yeah.
Yeah,
Although it's
that's
not as
not a.
bad as the two Voyager episodes where they have the Irish village on the holodeck. Those
Oh
were
yeah.
brutal. Um,
Well, Voyager was pretty much, in my opinion, Voyager was just kind of let's do everything Next Gen did, but worse.
yeah.
Like,
I actually, it was funny. I wasn't gonna when I was writing for Reactor. I did a rewatch of the Next Generation, and then I did Deep Space Nine, and then I went back and did the original series. And I was going to stop there because I wasn't a big fan of Voyager or Enterprise.
yeah,
Um, and then I did other stuff. I did my superhero movie rewatch. I did Stargate. I did Batman. And then we were coming to the end of 2019, and I was finishing up my superhero movie rewatch because I caught up to real time. I covered all the live action movies based on superhero comics that existed at the time. Um, and I have continued that feature. Like every 6 months to a year, I revive that feature for new stuff that has been released. But I needed to do something else. And 2020 was the 25th anniversary of Voyager's debut. And because of that, partly, because several people I knew who grew up watching Voyager, and for them, Voyager was their Star Trek, and Janeway was their captain. Everybody's got their favorite. You know, and they thought I should reconsider it. So I did, and I'm glad I did. There's a lot about Voyager that I have problems with, but they did some really good individual episodes, and they had really good characters on it, and some excellent acting. Um, Part of the problem was it was airing its first few seasons were airing simultaneously. Its first 5 seasons aired simultaneously with Deep Space Nine's final 5 seasons, and it
yeah,
suffered from the comparison. DS9 was fantastic, and it was watching it 25 years later without watching DS9 at the same time helped, because you couldn't help compare it at the time,
yeah,
and it was never going to live up to it. Um, and also going into it on a rewatch, I knew what it didn't do. I knew the consequences weren't going to be a thing. I knew that episode to episode continuity wasn't going to be a thing. I knew there
yeah.
weren't
That's what I could
going to
never
be
get past.
but like I knew that going in, so I didn't
Sure.
have to focus on that. I already knew what it was, what it wasn't. I could focus on what it was.
Yeah.
And I came away enjoying it much more than I did the first time through. I can't say the same about Enterprise. I still hated that after.
Yeah, I thought Enterprise was weak.
wasn't
But it
great, but
has
I
a
will
chance.
admit I actually liked it.
No, I know. Like I said, I don't expect people to
There are
necessarily agree with my own
people
take. That's the whole point. That's how art works.
Yeah.
Everybody has their favorites. Everybody has, and with something like Star Trek that's been going on for 60 years and has so many different aspects, it's sure there are some people who like all of it. I know several of them. There are also some people who only like the part they like, and that's fine too. You know,
There isn't a wrong answer.
exactly. I mean, there are some people who like the grim dark Batman. There are some who like the Adam West Batman and the Jerry Sprang Batman from the 50s in the comics. They're both perfectly legitimate interpretations of Batman. One is not better than the other. It's just, everybody will have their preference.
Like you said, it's art. Art is subjective.
Yeah. Yeah. And for characters that have endured the way and a setting that has endured the way Star Trek has, there's always going to be,
I will say, honestly, one of my favorite things to come out of Star Trek, and I think it's by virtue of the fact it's able to be a commentary on everything else by its nature, is Lower Decks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Lower Decks.
Yeah, it took me a while to get. I didn't. I was having trouble with it at first, but it grew on me very quickly. Um, Particularly once they decided. I had a problem with they couldn't make up their mind if they were going to be um, a 21st century workplace sitcom unconvincingly crowbarred into the 24th century or a Star Trek comedy. It worked better as a Star Trek comedy when they just
Yeah,
after a while they stuck with that and it worked much better.
yeah,
Yeah, I would agree.
they embraced
And
the
like
black.
I mean, even the Star Treks I don't like, they've always been done a good job of creating interesting characters. I mean, even though I wasn't that big a fan of Enterprise, I was genuinely invested in most of those characters. Um, and that that has always been the case. That was certainly true of Lower Decks. Even when initially when I was still kind of iffy about it, I was genuinely interested in the character.
Yeah,
And and same thing with with the parts of Voyager I didn't like and Enterprise. Um, that's worked out.
sure.
I'll say for me, funny enough, I even like the last twist of Voyage of Enterprise with who the cook is.
Oh yeah, well that wasn't we really.
Oh,
Yeah.
that famous last episode that is
Yeah.
Yes.
rather
But
dated by
if you watch, they keep mentioning the chef all through the series, but you never actually see him.
You did once, but you only saw him from the waist down. There was one episode where you saw, so you didn't know what he looked like.
uh,
But yeah, the it was funny. I was I did the rewatch and I included the final episode. And the thing is, the actual premise could have worked. The idea of um, using Riker and Troy as a sort of framing sequence for a final adventure there could have worked. The execution I thought was just botched horribly.
yeah,
But
yeah,
and
they
especially
didn't
because it
do
not only it didn't work as like there was nowhere in the next gen episode for that story to take place.
yeah,
And it ends with Riker saying, "I'm going to tell Picard about it," except he didn't tell Picard about it in the episode. You know, it should have been, and honestly, this is what I thought it was going to be when they first announced that Frakes and Sirtis were going to be in the finale. I figured it was going to be him as he's taking command of Titan after Nemesis, and you know some adventure, the last adventure of the NX-01 was going to tie into something he was doing on Titan, which would have made more sense. If nothing else, one of the many problems with these other voyages is Frakes and Sirtis were very obviously 10 years older than they were in the seventh season.
yeah,
Yeah.
So I couldn't believe they were doing that. And like I said, there was nowhere in that episode for any of that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't seen the episode in years, so I didn't have that point of comparison. Other than it's like they're older than they would have been at any point in next gen.
yeah,
But that's hardly new. I mean, just thinking of various Doctor Who episodes and the fact that whenever they bring the various doctors together, and they just ignore the age differences.
Yeah, yeah.
It's almost like it almost works just because any explanation they come up with is going to sound cheesy, so you just
Yes.
ignore it.
Yeah.
Or these days, I suppose they could do it with CGI, but still, I think it's funnier just to ignore it.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know how we got off on Star Trek so thoroughly here.
Three nerds together talking.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
eventually going to
yeah.
veer into something. It's all right. I never mind talking Star Trek.
Nor do
Nor do
I.
I. Like I said, I've been a Star Trek fan for literally my entire life.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
still remember as a kid, there were two things in the original series that gave me nightmares: the salt vampire and the man trap. Just the look of that just scared the crap out of me. And the big green fat guy from The Children Shall Lead. Um, to this day, I still can't watch And the Children Shall Lead without it like causing me problems. Well, also because the episode is terrible. But uh, but yeah, those two things I remember gave me just horrible nightmares.
So this is a paranormal show. Just out of curiosity, you ever have a paranormal experience?
Not really. Um, Not that I didn't, write myself.
Fair enough.
um, no, I haven't. I'm fairly agnostic when it comes to stuff like that. I'm perfectly willing to accept the possibility that it might happen, but I have not observed any myself. And I'm generally a rationalist, and
Kind of where I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm certainly open to the possibility if it presents itself. It just hasn't, at least in my presence.
Yes, yet again, I
And
am the lone
it's,
believer in the gang. That's okay. I've seen enough weird stuff for all three of us combined,
there you
and
go.
then some, unfortunately, at times.
But I love reading about it, and I love all the different folklore that is built up around it. Even if a lot of it is there by way of explaining things that science hasn't figured out yet. You know, um, yeah, a lot of the myths and folklore that developed were ways of explaining things they didn't understand, and a lot of it is stuff that eventually, we did understand. I mean, there's a perfect example in Norse mythology. There's a story of Loki, who is punished by being tied uh, to a slab in a cave with a snake dripping venom on it. But his wife Sigyn catches the venom in a bowl so he won't get hurt. But once the bowl fills up, she has to dump it out. So when that happens, the venom drips on Loki, and his convulsions shake the earth. That's why we have earthquakes. That was the story, was a way of explaining why earthquakes happen. Of course, my first thought is, why didn't you just have two bowls? But
Mhm.
uh,
Or just hold the bowl at an angle so it just slides off onto the ground.
right, that would work too. Um, but that tendency in humans to come up with stories, but as a way of explaining things, is something that's always interested me, and just all the different things that different cultures have come up with uh, over the millennia is just fascinating as hell. Uh, and I love playing with them, and mixing and matching them, and reinterpreting them, because that's what we spent our entire existence as humans doing, is reinterpreting those stories. Uh,
Like
and
all the different vampires and werewolves and folk.
exactly, yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
There's so many types that people haven't written about yet,
Yeah.
or don't read about much. There are
And
werewolves. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, one of the things I'm trying to do, not just in Supernatural Crimes Unit, but also I have another urban fantasy series that takes place in New York, The Adventures of Brom Gold, and it's the same thing. I'm trying to bring in stuff from a lot of different sources, not just the stuff we've seen a billion times in popular culture, but some of the more obscure ones.
Well, I will share with you then one of my favorite obscure bits of werewolf folklore. Have you ever heard of God's wolves?
No,
So in Lithuania, Germany, and a couple of other places, there is a belief in werewolves that work for God.
okay,
They are either part of a secret society where they pass wolfskin belts, which, as you probably know, is a common way to turn into a wolf,
right,
to each other, mentor to student, or sometimes they get them from angels. And on specific nights of the year, always tied to the harvest, witches will come out of hell and steal grain and steal cows. So the werewolves turn into wolves and go down to hell to steal it back.
Nice.
There is, and if you look very early in this channel's history, both for you and for anybody listening who's interested, there's a Roman inquisitor who put one of these guys on trial, and is left with a very confusing situation of this guy says he's a werewolf, but he's not in league with Satan. What? And his punishment basically came down to stop telling people you're a werewolf.
It'll just confuse them. Don't tell them.
Yeah. He wasn't beaten. He wasn't executed. He wasn't tortured.
Right.
Just stop talking about it. Don't train
Right.
a successor. Let it die with you.
Don't ask them.
And I go to church once in a while. It won't kill you to go to church once in a while. But it's one of my favorites because again, not a lot of people know about it.
Yeah. No, I like that. That's
Yeah,
that's the sort of thing that
there's
so
them.
many
There's like the
wonderful
Ben and
stories.
Dante.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I've actually met somebody who technically was Ben and Dante.
Huh.
You know what? Have you heard of Ben and Dante, Keith?
I'm not placing it.
So in Italy, there are two types of witch, as it were. There are Malandante, which means evil walker, and Benandante, which means good walker.
Right.
To be a Benandante, you're supposed to have been born with what's called a caul wrapped around your head. It's a bit of the placenta.
Mm-hmm.
And then that has to be saved and kept and various ritual
Okay,
things
some of
like
this is
that.
actually sounding familiar. I am Italian, so I've looked into a lot of different bits of.
And lo and behold, they're also supposed to be werewolves
Right.
that work for God.
Yeah. And sometimes they enter the dream state and things like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fun stuff.
Actually, I did a story for the Weird Tales 100th anniversary anthology in 2023. It's called 100 Years of Weird, and it's about half reprints from the first 100 years of the magazine, like the first Cthulhu story and the Brad McMorran story by Robert E. Howard, Drill of Drury story by C.L. Moore, Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov, all these cool people, plus new stories by a bunch of people like Laurel Hamilton, R.L. Stein, Scott Sigler, me, James Aquilone, and I don't know what I'm doing in that company, but there it is. And I wrote a story that takes place in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, involving a family of Italian immigrants in the 1930s, and a kid who basically rather accidentally summons a demon called a Scultone, which is a demon from hell, and it bonds itself to the kid and takes revenge on everybody who's wronged him, which is
dear.
One of the ones who's wronged him is his father. So,
oh dear.
Yeah. But it was that was a fun story to do. I love I love writing about New York. I love writing about Italian characters of Italian descent because you don't see them represented that often, and when you do, they're usually mobsters or comic relief.
Yep.
And this story, scratched both those itches because I love writing about New York in different time periods as well. The novel I'm currently working on, which will be out, we're going to be releasing it in time for DragonCon later this year, is called The Inflictors, which is about a team of superheroes in New York in 1977. And it's really fun writing my childhood, basically.
Yeah.
And because New York was a much different place when I was a kid. It was
especially in the 70s.
Yeah. I mean, the city was broke.
Thing.
The crime rate was through the roof. The air was choked with smog, and it was a mess. And which makes it a perfect place to have a superhero team. So, and I actually used the team includes a vampire, actually. A woman who was turned into a vampire and then killed the guy, and now she's actually a heroic character using her vampiric powers for good.
Nice.
And a woman who can fly, and so she dresses as a pigeon because everybody hates pigeons, so she figures she'll strike fear into the hearts of evildoers, like that. And a martial artist, and a guy who's super strong, and a guy who's built an exoskeleton, and also a talking cat who has razor sharp claws, and who doesn't so much like everybody else is like invited to join the team by the guy who forms it. The cat just sort of shows up and assumes she's part of the team. So
Sounds like a cat.
yep.
I mean, humans did not domesticate cats; they domesticated themselves.
Yep. And they domesticated the humans too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, ours certainly, it's like, feed me now. And I will keep knocking things over until you feed.
So what are you working on now?
What I was just talking about, that's one of my current projects.
Oh, okay.
It's called The Inflictors. First book is called Come Together, and it'll be out, like I said, for DragonCon. I've got an outline for the next Supernatural Crimes Unit book. I'm just waiting for the go ahead to do that. Got a bunch of short stories coming out. I actually have to. I've got one coming. Last time I was on the show was talking about the one for Curiosity of Cats from Eastbeck, which is my Lewis Carroll story. I've got what else? I've got a story coming out in a Creepshow anthology that is coming out. It'll be it's about two karate schools in a town and who develop a rivalry from which only one will survive. I wrote a Green Hornet and Kato story, which will be out sometime this year. It's called Detroit Noir City. It'll be out from Moonstone. This is a bucket list item for me on two different levels. One, it's writing the Green Hornet and Kato, which I've always wanted to do, and two, the story is titled "Everybody Was Kung Fu Fighting," which I could not resist, and it actually fits. It deals with a lot of things that were happening in the martial arts community in the '60s, in particular. And I've got a short story collection coming. Two short story collections coming out this year. One is for the Dragon Precinct series. It's called Dragon Precinct Origins, which is the backstories of each of the detective characters in the series. I'm in the midst of that. I've already successfully kickstarted it. It'll be out later this year. What else? I've got a story, an anthology called Heritage. Capital H, capital E, capital R, Itage. It's alternate history stories where women's roles are better than they are in reality. And I'm doing a story about Mary Shelley for the third volume, which is called Roiling Rambling History. That'll be out in July, I think. I'm doing some more Sherlock Holmes stuff with Chris Abbott. It's been fun. There's something else. I've got a story in. Robert Greenberger has been doing a series of pulp anthologies called Thrilling Adventure Yarns, and I'm doing a story for the one that's coming out in July. It's called The Kidnapping of Ticonderoga Beck. It's my second story featuring Ticonderoga Beck and the Stalwart Squad, which is also a 1930s era story, but it's about a team of adventurers led by Ticonderoga Beck.
Folks, I will have a link to Keith on Amazon in the description later tonight so that you can find what he's writing.
Yes. There's lots
of otherwise, what's the point? They can't find it. That sounds good.
I've also got two stories that are going to be in role-playing game books.
Oh, really?
But I can't say what they are yet because I signed NDAs on both of them and they haven't been announced yet. But but they're both really cool, and I'm very much looking forward to being able to talk about those.
Yeah, Brian and I are both gamers, so that's up our alley.
Yeah. But those are both games that are still in development. But I know one of them is definitely going to be on Kickstarter soon. I'm not sure when, not the other one, but I think that's also going to be crowdfunded. That's become de rigueur in the gaming industry these days.
I was going to say.
Well, I mean, that's Eastbeck's business model too. They run crowdfunding campaigns for all the books. It's how they make their production costs, and it means that all the sales of the book are pure profit. It's a good business model.
It seems to work very well when it works. I mean,
I've got lots of stuff going.
Good.
I'm sure I forgot something.
Yeah. But again, they can go to the Amazon link in the description. Check you out. Do you have a website as well?
It's terrible, but yes. You're better off. You're better off either following my blog or following me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky. Um, I still have a Twitter account, which I only use sporadically. I have a YouTube channel that's currently on hiatus. I have a Patreon. I'm on TikTok also, and um, uh, and I do have a website that has that. Like I said, it's terrible, but it's just a very poorly done link dump. And I have a blog on WordPress. It's decandido.wordpress.com, and I update that fairly regularly. So that's a good place to find me. But I'm fairly active online. I'm easy to find.
Right.
Also, if you just do a Google search on my name, I am the only Keith
Mm.
DeCandido in the world. There is nobody else with that name. So if you Google my full name, then you're
Wow.
just gonna find me.
It's hard to find
And
a
that
name.
I lucked out. One of my best friends is David Mack, and there are like 543 of those.
Yeah.
Including one other in the same business. There's the David Mack, the Kabuki comic, and has done Daredevil and other stuff.
It's pretty common too.
Yeah. Um, in fact, they both uh, David Mack, the writer, did a Wolverine novel, and they got David Mack, the comics artist, to do the cover for it. Just to
that's
confuse.
kind of funny.
Yeah.
I
As
find
it is, they both regularly get like the other person's stuff for them to autograph. Yeah.
I've had there is that I know of one other major Kevin Mears with my spelling of the last name, because it could also be spelled in the ARS instead of
Right.
ES.
Yeah.
And he's a clinical psychologist. I found him, I look up myself, and links will either be me or him for the most part.
Yeah.
Which is a little disappointing because it used to just be me. And from a marketing perspective, I miss when it was just me. No offense to him. In the
Yeah.
very unlikely event he ever sees this.
Yeah.
Granted, I thought at least once of reaching out just for the sake of weirdness to see if he'd come on.
Peter David told the story of there's a British economist who was also named Peter David who published a book, um, and at one point he called him up, uh, and when he got through to him at his job, he said, "Oh, so you're the reason why people keep giving me Star Trek books on?"
Yeah, the Kevin Mears in question wrote a book called Overcoming Worry. It's about all that, and that he's a psychologist. Is about all I know about him.
Yeah, but
Who knows? It's a weird little world out there.
indeed.
And it's getting past 9, so it's probably a good time to start wrapping up. Keith, do you have any final thoughts you want to share?
Just
Anything you just remembered to plug?
well, again, I'm really proud of Supernatural Crimes Unit NYPD. I was really happy with how the book turned out. I really want to do more of them. Like I said, I'm just waiting for Blackstone to pick up the option for more books. But I strongly recommend it if you are a person who prefers audio to written prose. I can loudly recommend the audiobook. It was read by a woman named Patricia Santamaso, who did a phenomenal job. I was extremely happy with the job she did editing it, reading it rather. Excuse me. Um, there's also, I should mention, I've got stories in several issues of Weird Tales magazine, including the issue that it's already out in audio, issue 372, and it will be out in print and ebook soon. It's a prequel story to Supernatural Crimes Unit.
Fantastic.
And Patricia did the audio for that as well. And it gives the background. If you've read the book, there's the character of Sophia Umali joins the unit in this book. She is replacing a detective who got his foot chewed off by a galipote, which is a Central American dog creature. The story in Weird Tales is the story of how Jimenez got attacked by the galipote. So, and assuming I get to do book 2, I'm going to be following up on that.
I don't know a whole lot of Mesoamerican folklore myself.
Well, there's
I don't know a lot of Native American in general folklore.
Yeah. Well, there's that the galipote is Mexican, Cuban.
Yeah.
Cuban, I
Hmm.
think, and but Central American in any case. And there's a huge population in New York of people from the Dominican Republic, from Haiti, from Mexico, from Puerto Rico. Um, so there's going to be, that's a good place to mine supernatural creatures.
Yeah, it's one I don't think gets used a lot, other than the fact everybody on Earth has heard of the chupacabra.
Yes.
Which I still personally think is as much because people like saying chupacabra as anything else.
Well,
Yeah.
It's a fun word.
it is.
Half of them probably think
Everybody loves
it's a new thing at Taco Bell, but it's
Yeah.
it's latest menu item. Chupacabra.
I'm just thinking of I'm blanking on his name. John Hartness's Bubba the Monster Slayer series.
Yes.
In fact, he keeps calling it a chalupa which is perfect. I need to go back to that. I have such a backlog of books and audio books I'm supposed to be keeping up on. It's kind of embarrassing. I don't read as much as I used to, and that's not a good thing.
Plus, we keep writing more.
Yeah, and you people I keep knowing meeting great writers who write really cool things, which just gives me more to read. Not that I would ever even pretend to ask you to stop, because aside from it being your money, I like more books. The world needs more books, not less books. But I think we're going to probably wrap it up, ladies and gentlemen. We are back again this week. We should be back next week. I think next week at this point, we're going to be doing a little bit of a return to form and talking about demonology. Just with the higher numbers we've had lately, I want to refocus a little on that. Um, but we'll be here. We'll take questions, and we may have guests. We may not. We'll see what happens as time goes on. Keith, thank you for so much for joining us. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you for
Uh,
having me.
and with all my guests, you are more than always welcome back, especially when those newer projects start coming out.
Yes.
Come back on and talk about what you got coming out. Particularly, I want to know about the RPG stuff you can't talk about yet.
Yeah, I look forward to being released from my NDA on that one.
Indeed. But until that's going to do it for this week, folks. Until next time, this is Kevin Mears saying good night and God bless. Brian,
Brian McKinley saying keep your fangs sharp.
good night, everybody. Let me